moving slightly on, Ben, you might be able to enlighten me on this. I've almost over the last 6 months, I have a lot of conversations with an awful lot of people who, as I've said before, if the EBN was an education system, we've got people at PhD level, but the vast majority are at preschool still. And that's not to patronise where businesses are. But the conversations I've had with people at that kind of preschool upwards level is, over the last 6 months, I've heard this expression, natural capital and biodiversity net gain, come up time and time and time again. And I've had people say to me, CEOs of businesses, I'm getting my head a little bit around what we've got to do with carbon, and I'm beginning to understand scope 1 and 2, and there's a 3. Now I'm hearing that something went on in Montreal before Christmas, and now natural capital is on the agenda. What's going on?
We just like to make things difficult, I think. Also calling it the Conference of the Parties in Montreal.
Yeah,
definitely.
And number 15.
Yeah.
Well, we've already had 27. I didn't get that. Anybody answers on a postcard.
Different party. Doesn't help things. It's very difficult. And I think one of the biggest challenges is getting people to engage with it, because they see all these acronyms, they change every week. There's this big fear of getting it wrong and getting kind of set out as a pariah. So people are kind of backing off from it occasionally. And I think that's really bad. That isn't what we want. As you're saying, we need people to engage, and some of the conversations we're having about farmers is kind of a prime example of that. So biodiversity net gain, just on those two things, is specifically a new term that's come into the UK due to the Environment Act, the Environment Bill, and that's starting in November this year. And so that's a requirement for all developments that meet certain thresholds to generate a 10% net gain in biodiversity, which is measured off habitats. So that's kind of a very UK-specific mechanism now that will really change how development works in the UK. And then natural capital is a wider approach trying to understand what parts of the natural world provide benefits to humanity and to kind of civilization. Understand, and it's an accountancy language, so it's stocks and changes and increases. So it's what are the stocks of the natural world that you own or that you have an influence on? What benefits are they providing? Can you quantify those? And then can we measure if they're improving or they're degrading, and what can be done about it? So terminology is difficult, and I think that's kind of one of the problems. And as we're in a very exciting stage, particularly around measuring nature and those kind of things, everybody has their own acronym, everybody has their own tool. And trying to provide the materials and the networks like this where people can understand, where do I start, which bits do I need to know, and what should I know, I think is kind of critical over the next couple of years.
Yeah. So
I think there's, to throw three more acronyms into acronym soup. In a corporate lens, there's a real challenge about kind of coming up with an integrated answer to these challenges, because you're looking at the moment, you're kind of like, okay, how do I sort TCFD, the Task Force of Climate-Related Financial Disclosure, out? But then you're also looking at the fact that we've got a draft version of Task Force for Nature-Related Financial Disclosure. There's a draft science-based targets for nature. So there's an element of like, how do you integrate the answers to all of these? So it really does need to be quite holistic thinking, because otherwise you're just siloing all these answers and it becomes really poor as an answer. But I think there is also an extra point that kind of links back to the farm, particularly for businesses which got quite a short time frame, because anybody who's got a science-based target has to get their alignment to this by the end of next year. Is that you've got the FLAG guidelines, the forestry, land use, and agricultural emissions, and that for corporates basically means they've got to look at, if they've got a science-based target, they've got to account for the emissions that are associated for those separately in their target, their reporting and accounting. And that's putting huge amounts of challenge, because it means they have to understand land use change down the supply chain. It means they have to understand deforestation. Those are things that people don't have a full handle on at the moment. So it's that element of kind of which bit do you prioritize first, and getting a holistic answer on it. So it is that kind of, we make an acronym soup for everybody to try and deal with.
It's an Aladdin's cave for the consultants, I think, isn't it? So, and quite rightly so as well. But it's a fascinating area. I'm from as a marketer rather than environmentalist, I see the opportunities. It's really exciting, really, from that point of view. So, the Environmental Business Network is here to help all businesses adapt to and benefit from the very different economic and environmental futures we all face. Subscribe to our YouTube channel or visit the website to find out more information.